If I asked you, who are the Latinos? Where is Latin America and what countries make it? What's the food like and what languages are being spoken there? Would you know? Today we're going to talk about 5 misconceptions about Latinos and Latin America. Cześć ludzie, what's up people? Hola Vigos, Dad here. Welcome to another episode. First of all, let me address, this is so epic. Look at that. You guys chose this place. On my Instagram, I put 2 choices of places where I was going to record the next episode, and this is the Garden Hill and Pergola in London, in Hampstead Heath. Anyways, if on that question that I asked you on the intro, you were a little hesitant, don't worry, I'm not trying to test you as if you are in high school or anything like that. I just try to prove a point, which is that in Europe, there's not that much being taught about Latin America and Latinos. So me being a Dominican, Latino, Caribbean, I want to tell you guys a little bit more about it and maybe knock down some misconceptions that I've noticed throughout the time keep popping up here when I meet people. So what is the definition of the word Latino? Well, it's a shorthand from the Spanish word latinoamericano, and it includes people with ancestry from Latin American countries regardless of the language spoken, and it excludes Spain and Portugal. And another word that you probably have also heard being used interchangeably with Latino is Hispanic, which in this case includes people from Spain. If we trace back in time, the word Hispanic was first used and defined by the U.S. Federal Office of Management and Budget in 1977, which defined a Hispanic person of Mexican, Puerto Rico, Dominican or Cuban descent, as well as South America or any other Spanish culture regardless of race. And the word Latino was born out of a criticism over the word Hispanic because many people thought that it just asserted a colonial dynamic relationship with Spain. Others also argue that the word Hispanic failed to address the mestizo culture, the indigenous, the Afro-Latin, and the Asian Latinos throughout the Americas. And in the end, the word Latino was also described as more inclusive. For example, Brazilians are considered Latin Americans because they are in Latin America, but they're not considered Hispanic because they don't speak Spanish, they speak Portuguese. And for the sake of this video, we're going to stick to Latinos and Latin America. We're going to exclude Spain because at the end of the day, Spain is more European. And we did inherit a lot of things from Spain in Spanish, but there's a lot more commonality between us countries in Latin America than we actually have with Spain. But we must also cover something that affects me directly. The Caribbean. Whenever you speak about Latin America, you have to always include the Caribbean. Latin America and the Caribbean, which is divided between the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles. Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic are all part of the Greater Antilles, and we also speak Spanish. And now that we have gotten all that history lesson out of the way, let's go to the fun part. Number 1. Latinos are always dancing and joyful, right? If there's one thing that I've heard more than any other thing whenever someone finds out where I'm from, is this one. You're from Dominican Republic? Yeah, dancing, Latino, happy, huh? It's not something that particularly bothers me or actually any other Latino that I've encountered, but the reality is that it's really not true 100%. I remember that this was one of the things that actually surprised my wife Carolina the most when she moved to Dominican Republic with me. The fact that people are not always so joyful, so happy, so, dancing all the time. The reality is that, we are just normal people. We have bad days, long faces, sometimes we're sad. Europe has sold this idea that us Latinos, and Caribbeans especially, are this uber happy people that it's almost impossible to wipe our smiles off our face. To be fair, this has also been exploited by our own countries. You know why? Because it sells. When you go on holidays to a resort, you're expecting great weather, warm water, happy people dancing. Which leads me to the next thing. Not all Latinos know how to dance. As we say in Dominican Republic, some of us are born con el pie izquierdo. But it is true. We are exposed to music from very early on, and there's always some sort of music or dance being involved in all the activities that we do. Birthdays, Christmas, there's always a good reason to crank on the music and get the hips moving. Number 2, careful, a Latin lover might steal your partner. thanks to Hollywood, now the world thinks that we are the players of the world. The reality is that, it is true, Latinos tend to carry ourselves with a little bit of charm, and let's say we tend to be a little bit more sensual, but to say that we will steal your girlfriend or your husband, no, that is a misconception. And although I do believe that there are scumbags, everywhere in the world and from all nationalities, I can see how this misconception maybe came about. We are very touchy-feely people, and if you come from a culture where this is not normal, I can see how it can feel really inappropriate to you. But it's very common and actually very normal for a Latino to compliment on the looks of a friend or even the boyfriend or a girlfriend of a friend. And there are very, very subtle non-verbal communication cues that, I repeat, if you're not used to them, it just might feel plain wrong. It's not the same to say, for example, "Hey, you look great today, wow," than to say, "Hey, you look great today, wow." The second one, just no, okay? No. But I do have to address and admit that there is such a thing as sex tourism. And in our type of countries, you have warm weather, you have resorts, people go on vacation, and some of the locals sadly do illegal things like try to get it on with the tourists. Some of the tourists themselves are not free of guilt because they're also exploiting the people that are in need over there. But those things happen, it's illegal, and it's a behavior that does not define who we are. Number 3, we travel inside Latin America all of the time. This is sadly not true. When you take into consideration that when you say Latin America, you have the Caribbean on one side, you have Central America, which is actually part of North America, Mexico and Central America, and then you have South America. And the South American continent is huge. It's actually twice the size of Europe. And when you also remember that most people in Latin America live under poverty lines, then there's not much road tripping going on. I should also mention that unlike Europe, there's no such thing as Schengen visa for Latin American countries. There does exist an alliance of nations called Mercosur. Its full members include Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay. As of 2016, Venezuela, who used to be a full member, has been suspended. Those member nationals can travel, visa-free, just using their ID cards. But of course, those are just a little handful of countries in South America. It might be very surprising for you guys to know that the flights between Latin American countries are actually very expensive, and not to mention the distances. Going from Buenos Aires to Bogota is going to be a 6 hours and a half flight, which is roughly the same time that it's going to take you from Madrid to Moscow. But sadly, that's the reality. We don't get to explore our countries as much as we would like to. Myself, I've never been to South America, and I cannot wait to go there, take Vigo, take Carolina, and for us to discover other countries from our brothers.
Promesas son nada más que solo palabras, y si no las cumples se van a desvanecer. Algún día volverás tú al lado mío y yo de testigo. Vamos 1, 2, 3 sin estrés. Muéstrame sus pasos, te cuento hasta 10 y ven. Yo sé que tú quieres moverlo sin pena, ven, sin estrés. Muéstrame sus pasos, te cuento hasta.
Number 4, Latin American cuisine. There's no such thing. Kind of. Unlike the Mediterranean diet or the Slavic diet, where you have many countries that share not only very similar ingredients or basically the same ingredients, but also the way of preparing the dishes is almost exactly the same. In Latin America, it's not quite so. Because of all the different climates in Latin America and the different terrains, we have different foods that are being produced and eaten and harvested in different parts. For example, let's take the modern Mexican cuisine, which, in my opinion, it's the most internationally known of the Latino cuisine. It has been shaped by the varying climates of the different regions, the geography of each region, as well as the influence of Spanish and Mediterranean culinary traditions brought over during colonization. When the Spanish arrived to Mexico and Central America, they found that the natives were mostly cooking with beans, chili, tomatoes, corn, and they introduced pigs, cattle, and other livestock. If you take Caribbean countries such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, we don't use as much corn as Mexicans do. The basis of our diet is rice, beans, plantains, and of course, a lot of vegetables. If we go to South America, it's impossible not to notice that the Spanish and the Portuguese colonization in the 16th century shaped its culinary history. These European influences mixed with indigenous cultures created a cuisine that is based on old staples like corn, potatoes, yuca, beans. The long coastlines also means a lot of fresh seafood, which makes for one of the most important and staple dishes of South America, which is ceviche. So when you say Latino food, it's not so easy to group as one. And to be honest, sometimes we get a little grumpy when people say, oh yeah, I love Latino food. And they're just talking about tacos and basically Mexican food. Number 5, Latinos are a single race. Latin America is a mixture of Native Americans, Asians, Europeans, Africans, Middle Easterns, Jews, basically a mix of races. We all brought a little bit of our cultures and just created this melting pot. In my case, I did one of those ancestry DNA test things, and just as you would expect, I am a huge mix of things. I come from all over the place. I am like 59% European, like around 20-something% African, 6.5% Native American, which basically tells you exactly what we already know. We are a mix of races. So comparing Nicaragua to Argentina in terms of culture, or for example Brazil to Peru, it's as difficult as comparing France to Croatia, for example. Very different history and somewhat different cultures. Obviously, because of the shared history of colonization by Spain, there's a bonding glue that joins us together. Things like religion and language. Where most of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are Catholic and Spanish speaking, still different cultures, and you're gonna find different ways of dealing with things. We like to say that we are brothers, that we really feel close to each other, but we are not one and the same. We have as many differences as we have similarities. Because remember, Latin America is huge. It covers from the deserts of northern Mexico to the icy wilds of Tierra del Fuego in Chile and Argentina. And it encompasses many different cultures, customs, and peoples. Guys, I would like to invite you to explore more of Latin America and the Caribbean. I know we're in a pandemic, it's very hard to travel right now, but start by opening up Google Maps and selecting a random country, let's say Bolivia, and see what are the neighboring countries. Go to Wikipedia, read about the history and the culture. We would love to have the world know more about us. Boom! That's all, guys. That's the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I was very excited to make this episode. I had it on a list of topics that I wanted to cover, and I finally did it. And cooler even, in this place that is so majestic. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and you know what? Most importantly, stay healthy and come back next week. Bye bye.